Ah yes, the one night a year Raw and Smackdown went head to head. The night where brand supremacy reigned supreme. Taking a look back at this era of Survivor Series, you get quite the mixed bag. At points the company was heavily invested in this meeting of shows, and at other times they didn't care to the point where the teams were announced on social media. Cast your mind back to 2009 and the creation of the Bragging Rights pay-per-view. WWE created the concept so we would get a big crossover show to determine which show was the best in all of sports entertainment, and as a result would receive this bootleg Stanley Cup as a prize. But take a look at this show, Survivor Series. What was once a Thanksgiving classic over the 2010s became a complete mess and went through a major identity crisis. Sometimes you'd get flat out duds, other times there would be some bright spots, and on the rare occasion you'd be really happy with what WWE did. At one point they were going to do away completely with the show and scrap it for bragging rights, but then the company decided to give it a remodel in a very simple way: SmackDown versus Raw. Every November, the battle lines were drawn in blue and red paint. All of a sudden, wrestlers from each brand had a level of loyalty to their show that was non-existent for the entirety of the year. From unity to betrayal to fantasy warfare to being the best of the best, let's take a look at the ride that was the battle for brand supremacy from 2016 to 2021. 2016, fantasy warfare just got real. Here it is, the fabled 2016 brand split. Dare I say the only time brand wars was executed well in this 6-year stretch. See, this was a time where Raw vs SmackDown actually felt like Raw vs SmackDown. Over the years, the company really manufactured things, and in turn, this became extremely redundant. The same angles, the same wrestlers in these matchups, and at times the same outcomes. But here, it was a sibling rivalry that became both of them wanting to one-up the other with the best general manager, the best roster, the best rivalries, the best branded pay-per-views. Simply put, the brand split actually hit here, and it felt like brand versus brand as a concept was organic. Of course, this night in the 6 is remembered for two huge matches. The first is the brilliant 5-on-5 Raw vs SmackDown Tag Team Elimination match. Why this worked so well was all the different stories told within this one match. But you know what's even crazier is that this type of match happened every single year until 2021. This one at nearly 53 minutes was the longest one and easily the best one. None of the other 5 even sniffed the 40-minute mark. You had Shane McMahon, the commissioner of SmackDown, lacing him up and sacrificing himself in an effort to have SmackDown come out on top. But as is the case in a lot of these tag matches, you have the classic tropes. And that was the battle between teammates. Ambrose and Styles were feuding on SmackDown. Rollins and Reigns didn't like Jericho. You had the comedy spots with James Ellsworth in the mix. But in order to take down a common enemy, the snapshot moment here is when we got a mini Shield reunion. Rollins, Reigns, and Ambrose coming together to hit the classic triple powerbomb. And like I mentioned earlier, it was the smaller stories within the bigger Raw vs SmackDown tale that mattered. And that came to the forefront in the finish when Randy Orton sacrificed himself to prove his allegiance to Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family. This led to SmackDown picking up the win in an exceptional match. Elsewhere, we had ourselves a 10-on-10 tag team match, which was a good time. The women got a chance to shine, but their match was pretty mediocre. This didn't have the stakes and storylines that the men did. We then got the classic trope of everyone gets eliminated in short order. Seriously, throughout these years, if you want to go back and sift through these shows and create a drinking game out of this, I don't think you'll survive this series. Every show is littered with A, teammates yelling at each other, B, refusing to tag in your own teammates, C, blind tags that one teammate absolutely despises, D, everyone teaming up to take out the big guy in the match, E, walkouts, F, Shane McMahon dying. Do you really want me to continue? So the selling point of this, as much as it was SmackDown vs Raw, was also the main event, where you had the battle of the behemoths. Brock Lesnar, who made this few-year stretch so special, taking on Goldberg. And for the first time in this run, Brock Lesnar was beaten in dominant fashion. 1 minute and 26 seconds is all it took for Goldberg to cap off the night and send the Air Canada Centre crowd into a frenzy. He beat the guy who beat the streak, the guy who decimated John Cena, the guy who was killing everyone in his path in 86 seconds. A WrestleMania-worthy clash that came and went just like that. When you look back to this show, aside from the nostalgia it might bring, all these years later, I can confidently say it was the peak of brand supremacy. 2017, Under Siege. The following year's edition of Survivor Series was based on that simple premise, as were a lot of these shows. Team Smackdown raided the Raw locker room, taking out everyone in their path. This led to an upset Raw commissioner who made it very evident that she expected victory for her brand. After seeing the 2016 edition of this show, you would expect another all-timer, but the question is, did that actually happen? Personally, I don't think so. This show is harmed by its confusing main event booking, and all in all, it's a two-match show. One of these was a dream match happening before our very eyes. The Shield versus the New Day. The team that ruled the locker room back in the early 2010s against the team that was the gel that held the tag team division together in the latter half of the 2010s. For these shows, the company oftentimes hammered home that brand supremacy created matchups that you wouldn't otherwise get. But Baron Corbin versus The Miz isn't exactly primetime viewing. However, this 3-on-3 match was exceptional. A year on from their spoof reunion, the band was back together for real this time, and Rollins and Ambrose were riding high as the Raw Tag Team Champions, only for the New Day to help the Bar beat them, giving us yet another invasion. And please tell me they didn't actually sell this awful half-and-half t-shirt. Regardless, this match was just a heap of fun. These two tag teams had amazing chemistry from the onset. Roman's power matched with Big E's power. You had an equal for each man on the other side. The finishing stages were really fun, with the Shield setting up for a triple powerbomb, it getting broken up, all hell breaking loose, and then Kofi hitting a splash over both Xavier and Big E, and then Big E hitting one off of Xavier's shoulders. At one point, Big E picks up both Ambrose and Rollins on his shoulders, and we get a double midnight hour. Michael Cole, who was one of 5 commentators on this night, by the way, goes insane. After our 3-on-3 line in the sand moment, the Shield pick up the win after a middle rope triple powerbomb. This was just so epic that I don't even need to continue. You already know how good this is. Dare I say this is underrated. Raw gets the early 1-0 lead on the scoreboard, and I say this because when you look at these shows in a vacuum, some years they don't even keep track. We get our 5-on-5 women's elimination match, which has Alicia Fox as the captain of Raw. This, bear with me, you won't believe this, is happening because the women of SmackDown invaded Raw. I don't think you would have ever pieced that together if I didn't tell you. Becky Lynch gets eliminated early on in this one, which is important because of her fever pitch popularity the next year and because she was the captain of the team, further adding more fuel to the raging fire that was WWE not giving Becky the same spotlight as Charlotte and Sasha. Commentary gasses up a Nia and Tamina meeting. Asuka ends up overcoming a 2-on-1 deficit and becomes the sole survivor for Raw. Makes sense, Asuka had just come up to the main roster, you should make her look like the beast that she is. So it's 2-0 Raw. This was quickly evened up by Baron Corbin beating The Miz in the Battle of the Mid-Card Champs, and then the Usos beating the Bar in a really fun match. Here's where you start to see the problem with the brand versus brand format. They run the exact same story every year, and some of them have almost no tension coming into things. Take Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair, for example. When the battle for brand supremacy became the battle for blonde supremacy, that might as well have been the tension point because Charlotte had just won the SmackDown Women's Championship the Tuesday before this meeting. Do you guys remember how amazing Goddess Alexa Bliss was before she became whatever she did in the 2020s? Like, you wouldn't want to go one-on-one with her on the mic because inside that 5 feet of fury was this unrivaled rage and savagery. As for this match, it was strong, not one of the memorable masterclasses from this night, but things picked up near the end before Charlotte tapped Alexa Bliss out. However, when I think back to this time frame, when all of these years fusion together and I think back to the red and blue shirts running wild at Survivor Series, the first man that I think of is Brock Lesnar. This dude put on classics in 2017 and 2018. He became the master of the little guy meets the beast story. And this year, it's a dream match. AJ Styles versus Brock Lesnar. This was supposed to be Brock versus Jinder, but Lesnar didn't think it would stylistically work as well as him versus AJ. I guess he didn't want to hinder Jinder. So we got a quick little title switch on SmackDown. This lived up to the hype and then some. These matches followed a very similar formula, but that doesn't mean that it didn't work out well in the end. Brock would dominate early, and then AJ would use his agility to get Lesnar in compromising positions. The rally styles hit were so quick and action-packed, but when this epic was done, Lesnar won. This was so good, and if the show ended like this, you would have gone home happy. For some odd reason, I thought that this was how this show actually ended, but it was actually the 5-on-5 men's tag team match. With both brands knotted up at 3s, it came down to this. This match is flat out weirdly booked. Maybe that's why I scrubbed it from my brain. After the classic you had last year, you would have thought that they'll try to outdo it, but it didn't even feel like they tried to make this make sense. I mean, just look at the amount of talent you have in this match all over again. Different generations, stars, old and new, baked in rivalries. Again, it's all at your fingertips. The crowd goes insane for a Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura face-off early on. Remember, this was back when there was some hope from a portion of the audience that things would turn around for both of these guys. So Triple H is teaming with his NXT children and fighting his NXT children. As the match goes along, you get that first little bit where everyone rotates in and out. Strowman takes out Shinsuke and Bobby in short order, so Raw goes up 5-3. Then comes the ending to this match. And what kind of 2003 booking was this? All this talent, and Triple H is gonna go over, brother. So Raw's got the 3-on-1 advantage, and on Team Raw is Kurt Angle, the general manager of Monday Night Raw. He and Stephanie have been going through some problems because she didn't appreciate the raid from Team Smackdown and wanted to get even, which Kurt did end up doing. But on this team was supposed to be Angle's long-lost son, Jason Jordan. He was replaced by Stephanie's husband, Triple H, so he wants to do his wife a favor and help the team get the win. So he pedigrees his own teammate in Angle. Then we get this weird fake out where Triple H goes to help out his brother-in-law. Shane McMahon in Big 2017 was SmackDown's final survivor. How? Okay, fine. He orchestrated the whole thing, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Braun Strowman and Triple H then have this weird bit of tension where they both want to be in the ring, and then pedigree, Shane's dead, Team Raw wins, LOL. This ends with Strowman and Triple H fighting to end the show, and this goes absolutely nowhere. So Raw wins Brand Wars number 2, and in doing so, the company delivers us a weird main event match. 2018, Blood in the Water. Look at this image of Becky Lynch. After yet another raid of Monday nights, the man was born standing tall in the crowd with her face busted open, and from here, nothing was ever the same. This ended up scrapping our champion versus champion women's match between Rousey and Lynch, and Charlotte was named as the replacement. But a bulk of the heat went to the facebreaker Nia Jax, who ended up being the sole survivor for Team Raw, beating Asuka, and I guess that kind of makes sense. She's the one who did it. Alright, let's put some heat on her. This match featured Carmella's dance break because it's 2018 WWE. What do you expect? As far as spots go, it's not anything out of the ordinary. Nia ended up screwing over her own partner in Sasha Banks to be the last woman standing. Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura was pretty fun. I don't really remember this being as solid or as long as it was. To me, Burn It Down Rollins just had a different vibe to him. The roar of the crowd, the amazing matches, it was all stellar. This was just a meeting of two technicians, two mid-card champs who had a 22-minute chess match. I've talked about how all these years kind of blend into one because they followed a very similar format. The more I watch 2018, the more I think that this show is actually underappreciated. And of course, after me saying that, Drake Maverick has to wet himself in a match between The Bar and AOP. And at this point, Raw is handing it to SmackDown and running away with things. But we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you a random banger. Let's let the cruiserweights go out and show out. Oh my goodness, these guys went a million miles per hour, and it was an awesome change of pace. You hadn't seen anything like this on the show so far, and for 12 minutes, Mustafa Ali and Buddy Murphy put on a clinic. And they had no reason to go as hard as they did, and this match had no reason to be as good as it was. Literally sandwiched in the middle of this pay-per-view. With another year came yet another 5-on-5 match. This year, Team Raw was once again having a lot of problems within the ranks. This was at the height of the Baron Corbin runs Raw timeline, so he was the one behind crafting Team Raw. I should also mention that WWE was so obsessed with this authority figure beat that they tried to make Alexa Bliss the female counterpart to what Baron Corbin was. On the SmackDown side, it's Miz, Jeff Hardy, Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio, and for the third straight year, Shane Mick, I don't give a shit, I'm here to die. Drew eliminated Joe very quickly and the crowd hated that. Team Raw later starts actually fighting each other. They continue to do this throughout the match. Only thing is, they aren't arguing, they're actually physically fighting each other. So SmackDown gets the upper hand, and naturally, what do you think's gonna happen? Shane McMahon, again, wants to kill himself. He hit an elbow drop onto Strowman, then later a coast to coast on Dolph Ziggler, so Shane continues his now 3-year streak of dying in these traditional brand versus brand matches. Oh wait, I'm sorry, he didn't hit the coast to coast once, he attempted it for a second time, only for Strowman to swat him like a fly. After so much dissension in the ranks, so many beefs for no reason on Raw, they ended up winning because Braun Strowman wipes out everyone. And the last one is Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon, for the second straight year, is overpowered. OPMC is the last one out for SmackDown. So Raw wins after Strowman kills 4 guys himself. So Raw 4, SmackDown donut. Then comes the ending to the show, and despite SmackDown not coming close in the overall standings, it was still a blast. First, the aforementioned Charlotte versus Ronda match. Literally a dream match for some. Becky's friend who she fought wars with and against, stepping in to prove that SmackDown was the best of the best. Right off the hop, they were throwing haymakers and trying to get the heavy hits in. You've got to sit back and give big match Charlotte her props, cause when she goes into this mode, it's game over. Ronda gets busted open in the early stages after Charlotte gives her the Charlotte's elbow, and over the course of this, it's just gritty and scrappy and physical, and that's the best way I can describe this. Neither of them stayed down, and the end comes when Charlotte beats the living hell out of Ronda out of frustration because she just can't do it. Everything is going wrong for her in storyline, her best friend has turned on her, and in frustration, she loses this via DQ. This was great, and I don't know what it is about it, it just worked. Charlotte left Ronda laying with the kendo stick, followed by her wedging her head into a steel chair. There had been talks that the company was planning to do this match the next year, but with the fever pitch popularity of Becky Lynch, it ended up being much different. So, 5-zip Raw. Spoiler alert, they ran the clean sweep. But anyways, it's time for year 2 of Brock Lesnar delivers a classic. 1 year on from the masterpiece between him and AJ, we were set for a rematch, only for us to get another last minute title switch. The company had actually briefly started building AJ and Brock too, but Bryan ended up winning the WWE Championship. And you don't need me to waffle on about how well these two gelled together. It's Daniel Bryan, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, going up against a guy who just understood the assignment. We got the match that was planned for 4 years beforehand at SummerSlam 2014. This match gets going, and early on you think, yeah, this is going to be Daniel Bryan getting killed, and that's exactly what happens. Bryan's not supposed to have a chance, and that's why this match works so brilliantly. Brock tosses him here, there, and everywhere in between, and Bryan is getting slaughtered like Lesnar is actually going to eat him. He's done nothing in this match. That is until Brock goes for an F5, takes out the ref, and Bryan goes for a low blow. And this running knee was a thing of beauty. Then Bryan takes this match over and delivers the offense to keep him down and grasping for air. These two just sucked you into the match. It's as simple as that. Even if you went in with your mind made up that Raw was going to win and Bryan had no chance, you thought, maybe, just maybe, Daniel Bryan ekes one out. He just wears him down any way he can. Submission, grinding down limbs, flying high, but it wasn't enough when all was said and done. This match is so brilliant because it's David versus Goliath executed to a T. So Raw gets the clean sweep in a show that was pretty pissing strong top to bottom, and I think here it becomes evident that it's time for a bit of a change up with these shows. 2019, Black and Gold. A whole new wrinkle was added in the battle for brand supremacy with a third contender coming into the fold. With NXT having moved to network television, the company was all about wanting to prop them up and give them as much shine as they possibly could. This time it was Triple H's show sending the warning shot to both Raw and SmackDown. This gave us memorable moments and a spotlight on stars who would later become even bigger stars, plus that very memorable post-Crown Jewel episode of SmackDown. This show took on a little bit of a different approach. Instead of every match being focused on brand warfare, fans were treated to some normal, non-themed matches. Take Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio or Daniel Bryan versus The Fiend. One thing about this show that's tiring is the amount of triple threat matches. Sometimes it just becomes overkill and a little hard on the eyes and the overall layout of the match. 5 on 5 on 5 kicked us off, and just look at the talent in this matchup. Stars wherever you look. But of course, this was NXT's night. Rhea Ripley, after scoring a win over both Charlotte and Sasha in the build-up, ended up leading her team to victory. The other 5 on 5 match, look at all the talent. Look at how many of these guys became stars for the WWE. Walter is out early and the Chicago crowd hates this. Among the many stories in this match, one is where Kevin Owens' allegiance lies, since he was on Team NXT the night previous. Meanwhile, he didn't trust Rollins either because Reigns was on the other team, and dating back to 2016, you knew that he wouldn't shy away from joining forces with them. Team Smackdown was sponsored by Purina, since you had the great dog food fight of 2019 between Reigns and Corbin. Matt Riddle ends up scoring a huge elimination over future RK Bro teammate Randy Orton. You got your obvious, oh no, here comes the Strowman train spot. And of course, since they had the final be one-on-one and 14 competitors were eliminated in this match, eliminations came in very short order. Rollins and Reigns attempt to kick it old school before this guy you might have heard of named Keith Lee snubs things out, and he dominates. He looks like an absolute stud. This looks like the showcase of who is your next star. Even more so because he gets to the final two against Roman Reigns, but he does it in a losing effort. This match was a good time. This whole show was a good time, really. You had Roderick Strong versus AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Adam Cole and Pete Dunne was the huge showcase NXT title match. Takeover main event at 3 times speed, if you will. That's why it leaves a sour taste in your mouth when you get to the ending. You had a lethal lineup, but the triple threat women's champion versus champion match was disappointing. Like, it's not bad watching it back. The crowd just seems indifferent to it. They'd seen so many triple threat matches, so many moments over the night, that this as the closer didn't make a whole lot of sense. Very average to end the night, but regardless, this November Chicago evening was painted black and gold. NXT took it and won their one and only appearance in this format. 2020, best of the best. As you'll see in the final 2 years of this format, WWE stopped caring. I know the simplicity of the raids is redundant, but they just stopped doing them, full stop. Instead, our story was Matt Riddle giving nicknames to everyone on his team as they headed towards an epic clash with the boys from the Blue brand. As far as matches go, this is easily the weakest one. It feels like WWE really did not care. Seth Rollins, then of the Messiah variety, sacrifices himself for the greater good of SmackDown, going down on his knees and telling Sheamus to end things. But there's really not that much else to talk about from this match. Each competitor from Raw picks up an elimination to their name and they get the clean sweep. But here's my beef with this match. Both Raw and SmackDown are running out of the Thunderdome at this time. They're filmed at the same location. If there was any year where they could have capitalized on the brand warfare concept, it was 2020. Let's flip the switch to the women's side. Here we had a full-on 5-on-5 Raw versus SmackDown match just to hit a punchline. Just to make Lana win after doing nothing. See, Lana for 9 straight weeks was put through an announce table by Nia Jax, and this from the writing team was the babyface's revenge. Just hang on a second, we'll get to how this ends. Basically, everyone on Team Raw thinks that Lana sucks and that she's no good. Her teammates don't want her to tag in or out, so they ask Lana to stand on the ring steps, and this is, I guess, WWE's way of trying to bring sympathy to her character. So the field whittles down to SmackDown having 1 and Raw having 3, all while Lana hasn't moved from her perch since being forced to stand there. It was Bianca Belair versus Shayna, Nia, and Lana. Here's where you're expecting the Uno reverse card from our girl Bianca, but that doesn't happen. First, they disqualify Shayna Baszler because she wouldn't let go of the clutch on Belair, and then Nia attempts to put Bianca through a table. Both of them brawl on the outside, and both Jax and Belair get counted out. Both of them get counted out. So your winner And sole survivor after doing nothing is Lana, the woman who spent 94% of this match standing on the steps. This is supposed to be her big haha I got you at Nia. I won. I got my lick back after doing nothing. Take that. Whatever. Fine. Elsewhere on this show, the Street Profits and New Day balled out. I mean, honestly, what else do you really expect from these two tag teams? You could have had them wrestle a mop and they'd still kill it. Sammy versus Lashley was the mid-card clash and it was literally nothing at all. Lashley made short work of things. Sasha and Asuka was actually very strong. Their rivalry continued on from the summer months with another solid chapter. Short and sweet, these two never missed. Personally, my favorite work that Sasha's ever done in her entire career is from the Thunderdome era. There was just a different vibe to her at this time. She went on to win and continue her strong run. When the night came to an end, it was main event time and Raw had the 3-2 lead. It's very funny, intentional or not, how many times we had last second title switches and how the champion versus champion matches ended up being different in a lot of these years. In 2017, Mahal lost to Styles. In 2018, Styles lost to Bryan. In 2020, Orton ended up losing to Drew McIntyre. Our result? Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. In the build, both guys looked fantastic. Roman dummy Drew, calling him the second best champion, while Drew just had something to him at this time. I said it was Sasha Banks, and I feel that more so with Drew. This is some of his best work ever. I seriously believe that Drew McIntyre's pandemic WWE title reign, in this case I'm combining both of them, is the most underrated title reign of the 2020s. It just featured a lot of strong programs and matches, and this one didn't miss either. Sometimes you have chemistry, sometimes you don't, and these two proved that they had it and then some. Who do you think won here though? Of course, I think this was a pretty good show. I really loved the main event, and despite it being a pandemic pay-per-view, it still holds up really well. Sasha and Asuka was awesome, the Profits and the New Day was great, but the problem that I've harped on recently is these shows mean absolutely nothing. Even in the late 2010s, the winning brand would mention how they won for a show or two, but here, it didn't even matter. This year, there was no score clock at the bottom. The announcers weren't even hammering it home. It was just like, yeah, we have to do this because it's a yearly concept now. This show was marketed as best of the best, but also The Undertaker's final farewell and retirement from in-ring competition, and to end the show, that's exactly what we got. The dead man laid his career to rest. Meanwhile, the WWE the following year laid this concept to rest, and also laid an egg. A golden egg, if you will. 2021, Rock Egg. Here we are, the final battle for brand supremacy, Michael, otherwise known as the fucking Golden Egg Show. So this is The Rock's 25-year debut anniversary. The opening promo is a mix of the night to come as well as a promotion for the movie Red Notice. The star of said movie is The Rock. Now, I've never seen this movie, but the film features Cleopatra's egg, which is very important on this night. We're told that anything can happen by our narrator, and we get shots of Rock and Roman in the opening video package. Very clearly, the possibility of Rock showing up is being teased. Keep that locked away somewhere. I'm gonna get to it multiple times. I didn't mention this in the 2020 portion of this video, but the last few years, a huge problem for brand supremacy was the fact that Wrestler X was just on the opposite show literally 3 weeks ago. They did the draft right before Survivor Series, and when you're trying to prop up how you bleed that color, it doesn't exactly go in your favor when you were on the opposite side literally 3 weeks ago. This draft gives us both women's champions switching sides, which led to this awkward title swap between Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. Apparently, Charlotte went off script and wanted to mess with Becky. This turned into our story heading into Survivor Series, a fractured friendship, a sisterhood that once was, now as bitter as ever. As far as a match goes, this was great. There was no feel-out process similar to Ronda and Charlotte. This was just a really scrappy match, and Becky won out of nowhere really. The fans were into it. Each time these two meet, it's always fun regardless of how it goes down. It's really funny hearing Becky chirp Charlotte that it can go down in the dirt sheets, but she's the best. But who is actually the best? Raw or Smackdown? It's time for our final edition of 5-on-5 Men's. This time it's built off a raid. Oh wait, that didn't happen this year. Yeah, they didn't do that. Okay, it's built off both brands slowly assembling the best team possible in order to prove to the bosses that they are simply superior. Yeah, that didn't happen either. In 2021, WWE took to Twitter to announce both teams. That's how much the company themselves were just done with this concept. They announced both men's and women's teams on social media with no rhyme and no reason. All things considered, both teams had some heavy hitters on them. Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Bobby Lashley for Raw, Drew McIntyre, Jeff Hardy, and Sheamus on Team Blue. What's so funny reliving the show is you see so many of Vince's failed projects littered throughout. Selfie Austin Theory, Madcap Moss, Happy Corbin. Lashley and Drew go after each other, they both get counted out, and when all the dust settles, you're left with a 2-on-2 situation. Sheamus and Jeff Hardy against Austin Theory and Seth Rollins. Sheamus, maybe still remembering getting literal piss thrown on his face, takes out Jeff Hardy, and to close things off, Rollins beats Hardy, and he picks up the win. Raw 2, Smackdown nothing. We later cut backstage where they show us Vince McMahon entering the arena with the golden egg. All the wrestlers from the back then break out into an egg chant, and after this they go into yet another Rock mini retrospective. Perfectly enough, it's him going corporate and joining forces with who else but Vince McMahon. So you go to McMahon's office, and here's our buddy Roman Reigns, who walks into said office, and Vince wants to show him something, of course, the egg, which he goes on to tell the tribal chief he received from his cousin, The Rock. He tells us that it's not a stage prop, it's actually the real thing, and it's worth millions. Roman does not care about this. Next up is The Rock's 25th anniversary dual-branded Battle Royal, which was won by Omos, who was offered a slice of pizza by R-Truth mid-match, which Otis ended up feasting on since this match was an ad for Pizza Hut. RK Bro and the Usos had a solid match that had a memorable finish. And yeah, they're not really making this thing close. SmackDown with 2 matches left under any circumstances can't win. But wait a minute, we found out that the golden egg has gone missing. Vince has no idea where it could be, and now the search begins. Who stole Mr. McMahon's $100 million golden egg? He tells Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce to call the cops, and they insinuate that it could have been one of the superstars. Back to that after this match. You could very easily tell that this was done just for the sake of it. There's nothing really memorable about this. The crowd is dead. They don't care. It was very average, borderline bad. We got a WrestleMania stare down between Banks and Belair, and the crowd came alive for that. These two bring some much needed life into this match, but then it's eliminations in short order, and before you know it, Bianca is down 4-1 against SmackDown. She overcomes the odds. She might as well have wore a Rise Above Hate t-shirt. She ends up getting the win for Team Raw, and that was that. I didn't have a good time watching this. I tried not to skip through stuff, but genuinely I kept checking the time, waiting for this to be over. I feel like the Brooklyn crowd was kind of doing the same. This was very, very drawn out. We get another Rock retrospective, this time from 2019. There's yet another Red Notice commercial. And seriously, this show is genuinely one of the biggest Vince McMahon troll jobs I've ever seen in my life. Maybe this one takes the cake. Here's our final matchup with this concept. Big E versus Roman Reigns. Raw champion, SmackDown champion. Leading into this, we had a tremendous triple threat match on Raw with Lashley in the fold. And for weeks leading into this, Roman and the Bloodline had been tormenting King Woods and Kofi Kingston, people who were near and dear to Big E's heart. I don't know if you guys remember how much people were clamoring for this to be Bloodline versus New Day in a War Games match. That didn't happen, but what we got was heavy-hitting perfection. This was a pristine match. Both guys had huge power finishes, and they just gelled extremely well. This was before that era where you knew Roman wasn't gonna lose till WrestleMania, and that was it for the night, as Roman stood tall as the best champion in all of WWE. Here it was. We finally heard it.
If you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Just kidding, that actually didn't happen. Roman won and the show just ended. Theory returned the egg to Vince the next night on Raw, and that was the end of that. I think the show perfectly embodies everything that was wrong with the brand versus brand concept. the show literally meant nothing. It's amazing where this concept started and how little the WWE cared about it when things came to an end in 2021. There's a ton of good, there's a ton of mid. I'm gonna leave that up for you to decide. That was your 6 years of brand supremacy at Survivor Series. But before wrapping up, you guys let me know, what was your favorite show from this 6-year time frame? I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down memory lane. See ya.